Welcome to Coleman Report Live. I'm Bob Coleman with Chris Hearn. We're talking Main Street and the small businesses who help it grow. Chris, good to see you. Thank you for joining us on Tuesdays. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Bob. Thanks for having me.
I know you're a little busy. Hey, we got a bunch of stuff that's come across. First of all, we thank you all for your support. And let's get to it. I guess let's go right to the poll questions. Number one, NFI love it. NFIB, I think there's pros and cons in that, but definitely take a look at the research. But this is from NFIP. It says, what percentage of small business borrowers say their borrowing needs are not yet satisfied? Boy, we sure made that a small bucket, Joseph. I don't. 2%. So I think that's positive. Chris, we always like to compare what's happening today with the recession 10, 12 years ago. And one of the things then, there was a credit crisis. You could not get money. This time around, 98%, those who want money seem to be able to obtain it.
I think that's generally true, Bob, but I'm curious what the sample size is. As you said, NFIB, it's a good organization, certainly supports small businesses, but I'm not so sure their sample is
Thank you for that, Chris. Yeah, you're absolutely right. This is self-reported. This is what the members are doing. Obviously, these are the members that are engaged.
That's right.
So I thank you very much for pointing that out. I think that's
probably more sophisticated, shall we call it,
yes.
or mid to larger size small businesses.
The ones that have the time to read. Right. Say, hey, I need to be in this. But
yeah. Probably not the people that were scrambling to find a lender to make their PPP loan,
or to find employees, or worry about the. I was at the beach. I couldn't believe it. The cargo ships off of LA are amazing. Just
I see the photos. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm down in Orange County, and they're backed up 30, 40 miles away. And you'll see this big cargo ships out there. All right. Number two. What percentage of small business loaners are interested in obtaining financing? What do you think, Chris? I'm going to put you on the spot here.
Well, I think it should be over 50%, although that's not an option here. The reason I say that is because coming out of a recession that was a global pandemic, smart small business owners should be trying to grow their business while some of their competition is a bit wounded. So, and part of the way to do that is to get some capital for working capital and growth needs.
As well as cash is king, and have access to cash in the bank.
That's right.
Our people did pretty good. It's 38%. So 30, 40%, I think. So I think we could say 1/3. So I think everyone nailed that. And I agree with you. I think if the small business entrepreneur knew of all the options that are out there, right, especially if someone walks them through, hey, this is what happens to your business in the time of rising interest rates. We haven't had an environment of rising interest rates for decades.
Well, yeah, going back at least 15 years or something, I think. Yeah.
And that's an uncertainty that prudent small business lenders lock that in to take care of their first of all, their personal real estate situations, then their commercial. What's 504 at today? It's the lowest ever, right, Chris?
Yeah, it's close. It's like 2.8, 2.9.
I mean, come on. Yeah. So I think there's plenty of availability for lenders to explain to the borrowers why we need to do that. Finally, this is an interesting question. What is the average rate paid on maturity of loans? I know. What are you saying here, Joseph? What is the average interest rate?
On maturing loans?
Yeah, I think we're saying the average interest rate. Is that what you're saying, Joseph?
Yeah, it's correct. Average interest rate.
Okay, average interest rate. Okay. And they nailed it. It's 5.6%. So that's very good. So take a look at the study. It's free. They just came out for the September study. There's a lot of great information in there. I guess we're going to, Joseph, let's talk about this first, then we'll go to the CFPB status. The thing I always like to read is their optimism. I don't know why all these studies do that, is they give us a strange code and they based it to a base level of 20 years. Anyway, the optimism is slightly decreased. And I think that's a positive, given, well, there's been a lot of negative news and a lot of negative hits on these businesses. So if it's only slightly, I think that's fine. Three, let's see, uncertainty, basically, but owners expect better business conditions over the next 6 months. That's the bottom line.
I think it's positive for this fall.
Right.
And to be only a slight dip after all the scary media headlines over the last couple months with the Delta variant. By the way, we're not hearing as much about that right now. So I think that's a positive going in the last quarter of the year.
Yeah. No, that's Wall Street Journal had some interesting articles today on opening up, that that's the highest occupancy rate in high-rises and post-pandemic downtowns, which is great for downtown small business. There was a great quote in there that I loved. One of the small business restaurant owners said, "Hey, you should have been here last Wednesday and Thursday night. No one would have known we ever had a problem." So that's nice to see those type of situations. But the world has changed.
Yep.
And the small businesses there, they are, what I like about the survey is that they are positive. They are working through supply chain. They're entrepreneurs. They'll figure out how to make it work.
They're going to adapt. Yeah. And actually, I think, people sort of had issues with the September jobs report that was released last week, but I actually thought there was some positives in there, and I actually think it's going to be a very big jobs report for this month when it releases.
Well, it'd be very interesting also with track consumer spending. And it's interesting, Chris, you and I never followed these, what I call more macro trends in the past, but the world has changed, and one of the things that's changed in terms of our manufacturing and our supply chains, et cetera, now your borrowers are definitely tied to what's happening on the global stage. And I think as good, prudent small business professionals, we need to be aware. We don't need to be experts on it, but at least be aware of how that impacts our local main streets. But I'm with you on the following the job reports. Bottom line is, I agree with you. There's a lot of other factors in that. But
That's right.
Bottom line, though, people want to work. People.
Yeah. Well, and they still believe that we have better days ahead, which we do. I think it's kind of interesting, the supply chain disruption over the last, let's call it 12 months, because it wasn't as obvious in the first portion of the pandemic. But I think what that's going to do is accelerate the onshoring of manufacturing jobs. It already started in the last administration, but I think it's definitely going to accelerate because, the U.S. economy is like 70% consumer, and people have the cash and they're willing to spend it. And if you have some of the constraints, the headwinds from the Delta variant and others going away, people are going to want to purchase things. And if they can't, because you have all these container ships off the Long Beach port, for instance, people are going to get frustrated after a while, and entrepreneurs are going to want to try and build it in their backyard to meet demand. So I think this is potentially a very good thing long term for us. Short term might be a little painful, but I think it's going to end up being much.
Well, it's going to be painful to make that transition. But Chris, that's a great point. I'm an entrepreneur, and I'm saying, I have this manufacturing capability. I can make any widget in the world, and I see that the Christmas season's coming up, and there's going to be high demand for this particular toy.
Right.
And I can make it here, and I can go to Walmart and Target and say, hey, I have it delivered now. So it costs a little bit more, but those executives, they're willing to pay it because they can't, otherwise they don't have sales. So
Right.
I agree with you. I think there's going to be some significant trends in terms of manufacturing coming back to the United States.
Yep.
Chris and I certainly are not saying that that's going to be the norm, but you're going to see more and more of those pockets of manufacturing bases and just because the entrepreneurs adapt.
That's right.
Figure out if China, for whatever reason, and I don't have to be the entrepreneur to figure out why China has a problem in terms of shipping this widget. All I know is if I can produce that widget at 20% more, but they can't get it through other sources. They're going to buy my widget. So
and I don't think the labor costs are the biggest reason why we start offshoring manufacturing. But I don't think there's quite the disparity there once was. I mean, sure, there is in certain pockets, but the actual transportation cost, logistics cost, and the delays that we've seen, I think those are going to be the big drivers of.
Well, I think it's because we're just-in-time economy, it's
That's
more
right.
the delays than the costs because
That's right.
car factories are closing down.
And there's the geopolitical stuff, the macro stuff in terms of dealing with China and what they're going to do. I mean, you're going to see more and more pharmaceutical companies onshore. You're already seeing a lot of the biggest U.S. tech companies being very concerned about crackdowns from China, fab plants making chips that, they're behind. I just think you're going to see a lot more come back to America going forward, which means for our audience here, that's a positive because that produce more
Ground
demand
up
for
construction.
loans. Yep.
I'm on my loan committee, and I'm saying, do we want to do another hotel? Nothing wrong with hospitality, but here we have this manufacturer. We're going to do a manufacturer. It's going to create jobs in the local community, and they're going to produce this product that they have people wanting to buy it now.
Right.
So that's
and as the big companies do this stuff too, Bob, is it has a trickle down effect. It will impact our small business borrowers as well, as subcontractors, for instance, or other things, or suppliers.
Construction, and then you got to feed these people and housing, everything. So I mean that's so when you hear these pie in the sky, you may think of requests. Take a closer look at them. There may be something there that's going on. Anyway, we're fans of NFIB. Take a look at that. You can sign up for their. The cost is minimal, join, but a lot of this stuff is free anyway. And it's a pretty cool 23-page report. Okay, let's talk about the CFPB. And for the history of this started during the last recession. It came out of legislation from Dodd-Frank. And Congress administration wanted to create a governmental entity that would stop or not have another financial crisis that led to the one in 2008, 2009. And part of that is they wanted to have a better understanding of the data. This issue that we're talking about but they want access to small business loan data. They spent a lot of time getting data on the home mortgage market, ethnicity, where the property is located, et cetera, to get a handle of what exactly is the value of the portfolio. But someone has said, hey, we also need to understand what's happening to our small business community, our underserved markets getting the credit they need, which I don't think everyone says, yeah, if you deserve the credit, you need to get it. But if it's an underserved market, we want to document that and validate it. So that's where we are today. I'm not going to go through the politics of it, obviously, but I want to bring up a couple things. This was posted in the Federal Register October 8th. You have 90 days to comment. You may want to peruse that, think about that. The problem for lenders is that it's going to require data. The big problem when we went through this analysis and before the Trump administration took over and put it on hold, and now it's being resurrected again, is it's one thing, Chris, you and I live in the same neighborhood, so it's pretty easy to compare the value of our houses. Here we have a situation, Chris and I are entrepreneurs, and Chris, my favorite thing is Chris runs the tire shop, the Firestone Tire Shop. It's been there 20 years, great company, great second generation, and they want, call it $250,000 to renovate their bays or whatever. Well, now we're comparing that, and from a lender standpoint analysis, that's a good transaction. But I come in and I say, I want $250,000 to open up a cupcake shop next door. And the bank says, no way. It's a startup. We're not going to do that, whatever. But now that data is there, that Chris got the loan and I didn't. And that can open up a can of worms. Chris, I don't want you to go out too much of a limb on this. Other than that is the concern that we all have is how do you compare apples and oranges?
Yeah, I think it is a problem, Bob. I mean, this is correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it's called the Consumer Financial Protection Board, right?
I'm sorry, did I?
Isn't it Consumer Financial Protection Board? That's what CFPB stands for? Yeah. So I think that's the concern for most of us in the commercial lending community is this has regulatory creep into our world. The CFPB was started because it was meant to protect unsophisticated, I often say, widows and orphans and all that sort of thing.
Yeah, none of us want predatory lending.
Of course not. Of course not. But now, the recognition is that there's a lot of small businesses that maybe are not terribly sophisticated, maybe would be burdened to hire an attorney, for instance, to read a contract for them or protect their rights in some way. And so that's where it's starting to encroach on small business lending. And I have some concerns about this. I'm sure most of your audience do. Yeah. And it's you have a good example there. I mean, how do you compare the startup cupcake company that wants $250,000 to the established, second generation franchise tire repair shop? I mean, it's night and day. But the folks in Washington are trying to equate it and say, well, if you approve one and not the other, there must be something nefarious there, perhaps. And
right.
To me, it just demonstrates a lack.
By the way, Chris, I take issue with your word of creeping. It's not a creep. It's a hit over the head with a baseball bat. They state very, very specifically what we're doing for home mortgage lending. We want to do for small business lending. I mean, There's no secret. The stats that we have from home mortgage lending and that. It covers what they're proposing, covers business lines, loans, lines of credit, credit cards, merchant cash advances. Exempted, though, are real estate transactions, which is, I need to understand that.
That's. I mean, I think that's logical, Bob. I mean, I think.
Well, that's logical, but it's also logical. That's my.
Yeah, but if you're going to buy commercial real estate, there's certain threshold of sophistication in doing that. So
I agree with you 100%. I'm glad that at least something is covered application, and this is the other problem that we complain about, is that inquiries need to be documented. Inquiries and pre-qualification requests.
Right.
So, okay, so let's wrap this up. It's a proposal. I think it needs to be on your radar. Get it to the person in your bank that probably on top of this. You have 90 days to comment on it, and we're starting from scratch. I mean, they're asking for, hey, which is a question we've always asked, is what is a small business? So it starts, which is good. I think that's prudent. So they're going to define that. They're going to define who this covers, what type of financial institution, non-bank lenders, et cetera, and so who does it impact? What type of borrower? What type of lender? And what type of product are they offering? And then what type of data do we have to generate? And it says it needs to be forwarded once a year, but then what is the government going to do with that data and how do we support it? So obviously there's going to be a cost in putting that together, and that's why this died years ago, but now we're spending time on it to let you know it's there. And also with SBA, you know very well SBA is going to be dovetailed with this, and if you're predominantly an SBA lender, this is going to be on your horizon.
If I can just say something about this, Bob, it's, we talked about this at the top of the hour, the NFIB, the optimism data, and both of us said, well, we're not really sure if the sample was truly representative, and therefore, we have to kind of take it with a grain of salt. You have the same thing here, which is it's one thing to mandate the collection of the data, but what does that mean when you get it? And do they know how to read the data? And again, back to your example, the cupcake startup versus the established tire repair place. I don't know if some of the bureaucrats in Washington are going to understand the difference, that one may be perfectly acceptable and the other is going to be a much, much riskier transaction. So unfortunately, just like bankers have been on the front lines in the war on terror for 20 plus years, looks like we're going to be on the front lines on trying to make sure that nobody is neglected or denied access to capital, which is perfectly admirable goal. It's going to get a little messy to get from here to there, I'm afraid.
Yeah, and I think that's what we're saying is think about that, and we will continue to live in a regulated environment, and just as entrepreneurs adapt, you're going to have to adapt. Chris, fascinating conversation. I appreciate it very much. Thank you for joining us. Chuck Evans is on tomorrow with his let Coleman go to the beach day, I guess. So thank you for joining us today. Coleman Report Live.
Ships again, yeah.
And go look at the ships. All right. Thanks a lot.